Have you ever had someone say that they were thinking about you? And it could be you calling them or you pass them on the street. And, but somehow you are the one that takes thought and uses the feeling of whatever, we're talking about a person here. So a thought, someone crosses your mind, right? And obviously, every time someone crosses your mind, you're not going to be like, oh, I have to call them. But there's a certain amount of, say, space or time. And when someone is on your mind, you're going to make a point to reach out and call them, especially if you want to connect, right? I know we're all busy. We all have really busy lives. And making connection with people, deep connection, isn't a priority today. And in this episode is for the one who is a a deep feeler, someone who connects on a deep level, and someone who maybe has been told they were too sensitive or um, too much, because then you are just dismissed that, you are, oh, it's that's in your head, or you're too much, or, you know, I'm busy, I care about you, or um, there's a bunch of different, I want to just call it for what it is, excuses. Um, and there was no, there was n no room for how you felt about, and just the simple disregard, and to already place judgment. You lose your footing. You lose your footing, your foundation. And that's what happens when you aren't in environments that support honesty. So then when you lose your footing and you lose your foundation, who do you think is going to take your seat? As soon as you lost your seat of that truth, of presence, here comes ego. And now ego is going to see how they're what they're saying as, yeah, so you're overreacting, you're too sensitive, you don't, your feelings are all messed up. You begin to lose touch with your inner knowing and your intuition. And this is something that I have uncovered through my own journey. And it took me a while to understand, because even understanding requires presence. Knowing versus understanding are two different things, which is why if you are a deep feeler, that all of us are feelers, but there's certain people who it is like it's like a gift to, and it is a gift because a lot of people don't know how to, and not even don't know how to. Yeah, they don't know how to, because their ego is very much so in their seat more than they recognize, because there is no room for meeting themselves. There is a moment when you start to wake up to many things in this world. And I had shared something on my Instagram account, and it was about the truth of what awakening is. And love and light isn't the way we've been taught what love is. Love is more than a feeling, it's more than something that you give, something that you receive. It is an energy. It is an energy. It's a state of being, but it comes from within and it comes only when we are open to being present, which is why the now is all. Otherwise, if you're not here, if you're not present, where are you? You're going to be on a program. You're going to be on something that has been uh, a patterning that has been learned, which is why you can drive your car and you can do other things because there's a program in the back of your mind that is that knows how to multitask and handle all these things. And so multitasking is a very automatic behavior. And my laptop, I feel, is going to disconnect. So I'm going to be back to get my charger. I was recording something today and I was working outside. Okay. Every thought that we have, it isn't ours. Not every thought is ours, and not every thought is true. And not every thought requires you to take action. And so if you're not present and a thought passes through your mind and consciously or unconsciously, because that's what the mind, some aspect of the mind is a place for thoughts. And that's where thinking happens. And so if there is a thought and you attach yourself to a thought, it's going to make you feel something. And how obviously how you carry yourself and how your energy surrounding you is, it's going to create an environment for certain thoughts that are in the realm of the mental space. So a thought comes through. Now let's pretend the thought is Veronica. Veronica comes to mind, and I there is a spark. There is, in order for you to attach to a thought, there's an initial spark that this is Veronica. And there is going to be now an associated feeling, energy that is going to be tied to the thought. And dependent on like the thoughts before, it could have a familiar energy. And so just say the thought of Veronica is connected to, this person makes me feel happy. There's this tied to memories of love and connection. And so the thought can make you feel warm and then you might be like, oh, um, to say I haven't spoken to Veronica in so long. I wonder how she is. There's there's going to be like, okay, what am I going to do? There's going to be an action, right? So let's say I am someone who forgets forgets that I say I forget things. So I had the thought, I brought a feeling, and this one was of, it was pleasant. It was warm. And I was like, okay, I'm going to call her. I haven't spoken to her in quite some time. And then the day goes by and the thought is gone, the feeling's gone, things happen. But when we are on autopilot and we're not conscious, you will forget if you are running programs. And these programs aren't of novel experiences, like the call that would have been initiated to call Veronica, that would have been a new experience because it would have been a new experience. So if I am practicing, because a lot of us would have to practice presence, and I think this practice isn't something that you can say, well, I'm so good at it now, I don't have to do it anymore. Just the nature of how the mind, because it is, you have an individual mind, because you have an individual energetic field, but it's also being circulated around the whole of the collective. So, which is why if you change environments, if you go to certain places, thoughts may be different. Like your thoughts at work may be different than the thoughts that you have when you're at home or when you go on vacation, right? And sometimes thoughts could be ways to distract ourselves. So, a lot of times when people don't practice being present with themselves and meeting themselves and really trying to understand the mind, focusing on one thought at a time, clearing the energy associated with the charge of a thought that could be limiting you, that could be distorting your perception, you might realize once you become present that, oh, when I go away, yeah, I feel good and I feel less stressed and I feel as if I'm being rejuvenated. But by the time I come back, here you are again, right? Because you can't run away from yourself. It's just, it was a temporary environment, but if you ended up being permanent in that location, then your natural, not natural, I want to say natural because naturally your how your true nature is would recognize the things that limit you. And so with, say, I notice and I work on reflection and I journal, or however, there's many different ways on how you can self-inquiry, meditation. Um, I may have noticed that, oh, I didn't call Veronica. Oh, so what am I going to do? You're going to be like, what did I do? Like, what distracted me from the thought that I wanted to take action, but prevented me from taking action, right? So this is going to be something that's going to be front of mind. And if you're someone who is practicing to be conscious, to understand yourself, understand your behavior, you won't notice that. So you will just see, oh, yeah, I always think about you, but there's no action. You didn't do anything with it. So then we just call ourselves, I'm forgetful. But have you taken the time to see what happened between the thought, the feeling, and I'm going to call it non-action, but that non-action is an action. There was something that pulled you. Now, either, you know, because I gave the example of the warmth, of how this person feels about Veronica when she calls and how they see the other. Maybe it was not a really good example, but a lot sometimes it could be whatever it is that happened, maybe something distracted me, or it could be whenever I maybe I don't want to put ideas in your head um, because it's not going to serve. But why am I saying this? Is when someone is telling you that they are forgetting, that, oh, you crossed my mind. And you're like, but why are they telling me that they crossed my mind, their mind, and they don't call me? I'm the one that is calling, but it's never coming from the other end. They aren't aware of the non-action taken, and they're seeing it as it slipped my mind. It came in and it came out. Just having a thought isn't having a connection. You connected with the thought alone, but you can't when someone approaches the other person and says, "I tried calling you," or I'm the one that's initiating, and I feel like I'm having a monologue with myself. I'm not really connecting with you because it doesn't feel like it's being it's a mutual connection. And they may have a very hard time understanding where you're coming from because they haven't sat with the part that took the non-action, which is labeled as I forgot to call you, but it requires them to be present with it. And when I forget, especially if someone is important to me, I want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. I want to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I will see like what made me forget? What was I doing before? What did I do after? And sometimes, yes, there's sometimes you do forget. We do forget. But to say that that is i- okay to say all the time, like this isn't just one-off situations. This is when you're with someone who is constantly telling you that they forgot or you're on your mind, you crossed their mind, or oh, I was just thinking about you every time you call. It's like, why even say that? Because you keep having these thoughts, but you keep forgetting to call me. So there is something happening. If you truly wanted to contact someone, you would make the effort to not forget, just like you don't forget other things um, that are important to you. And that's how we distinguish what is important to us. If something is important to you, you're not going to forget it unless there's a part of you subconsciously that is making you forget something that is important to you. But if that is the case, then wouldn't you try to understand why that's so? What is it about yourself? But a lot of people aren't aren't encouraged to find this out, to find out why until it becomes too too loud in the mind. There's so much weight in this space. There's so much because there is a lot of thoughts. There's a lot of thoughts up there, but they're not all yours. There's no turning inward. There's no turning inward. Someone may be, hurt that they weren't remembered on their birthday, and this isn't coming from a an ego place because feelings are real. So to acknowledge that, like it's my birthday and you didn't remember, it hurts. It hurts. It's not meant you don't hold on to that hurt. But when someone sees that you're hurt and then just says, "Oh, I thought," again, a thought is nothing. What's underneath that thought? What is the thought? How do you feel about that thought that you forgot my birthday? And that's the thing that people don't want to sit with. They don't want to sit with the underlying thought because after that feeling that supports that thought requires some kind of action. And so if someone, their habit, their their vasana, the tendency associated with a certain feeling is to avoid, they are actually doing that by saying, I forgot because I thought it was that day, and not give any more context because how you are feeling hurt, maybe forgotten, that is the feeling that they are avoiding within them instead of being willing to meet you in that. And that is how, and that is how true forgiveness takes place because they understand, because they were just in the experience of forgetting and the other feeling hurt by the experience and them picking up because they're going to have a feeling. It's either going to be because how your hurt is now being translated into their system and how they handle hurt and being uh, forgotten or abandoned. It's not a big abandonment, but it follows a route, right? And which is sometimes some people react in a way to something that may seem small to some, but is bigger to some other people because of what they're carrying and how deep this root is within their subconscious. So this is how true, where you can say it's okay because they've acknowledged something about themselves. So now there's an inner understanding. They're not understanding how you are experiencing, but they can relate because there has been an exchange. So if someone can meet their forgot and you show up as I feel hurt. I feel like do- you know, you forgot about me. Like no one wants to be not remembered, right? That's what I learned about like presence, about forgetting. Um, there's obviously um, nuance and different situations call for different ways of explaining it, but I'm trying to make something that is obviously very personal, unique to each individual. But from what I understand about being present and feeling, and you could only be able if there's at least one person who is present in the room. And this person would have to make room for that presence because when we are at capacity or for holding on too much within our being, in the mind, in the body, energetically, and the body's physical way of feeling tension, we confuse that with our energy and our mind. But when you just don't stick to the thought and then the story of the thought and the feeling without going underneath the feeling and being present with that feeling to understand it, you always feel stuck. You won't be able to express yourself because how can you express yourself? You could only understand something through experiencing it, and it's in the body. It's not out there. It has to be felt in the body. And when people start thinking in the mind, logical, they start to get the thought and start to analyze, you can begin to do some analytical thinking, but that comes with, especially if you're trying to process and have a understanding of something that is a little bit more, there's more history to it. So there might be some analyzing required, but in order to understand you yourself, you have to feel whatever it is that is blocking you, that is limiting you, that is dragging you down, that is making you feel less than, not enough. But that is, this body is designed to feel, to sense. And even this is hard to explain because it isn't something that you can explain in words. It loses its, I guess, integrity and logic. There's no feeling in logic. And the example that I can give is math. I'm not talking about, you know, um, geometric numbers. I'm just talking about math. Like when you go to school and you're learning arithmetic, you don't have to feel the numbers. You just have to, it's patterns, memorization. It's this is this and this is this. So this plus this times this, it's always, it's memory. You don't need to feel a certain way about each number. That's logic. There's no feeling attached to the numbers. But when we're talking about a human and how you experience life and how you make sense, which sense is, you need your body, you need the senses and a clear mind in order to not get carried away with the very thing that is creating and animating the experience, which is your emotion and the energy, so that you have a clear path to the spirit, your spirit, to make sense of all this, of what your experience is. But it's not logic. Ego likes things coming into the mind because it will take everything in the mind, more information. Information is just data. In order to make sense of that, it needs to be felt. So, a big theme surrounding a lot of my content is presence, being present. And it takes effort to do that. It is a, you have to choose to be committed and devoted to this way of being, which is what yoga is. Yoga is union, union in the present moment with mind, body, and spirit. Unfortunately, we weren't taught how to be present. We were taught how to take information and remember it as is and not understand what the body needs in order to thrive, what the mind requires in order to be functional, and what the spirit demands to have all three in harmony, in alignment. And that harmony is heaven. And when it's not, that's when all hell breaks loose. I always make it a point to remember what seat I'm sitting in. And it's sometimes you forget. And I feel that this is the experience of forgetting so that we can remember and return to who we really are underneath all of the layers that have been trying to hide your light, your power, your gifts, not, and I don't want to be speaking to your ego because your ego is going to take this information and feel like, oh, I'm now super, I'm special. And, you know, we are all unique and special in our own individual ways, but it doesn't make one more superior than the other. Um, and when you are able to be present with yourself, no one can teach you that. No one can teach you. There's tools, there's some people who can support, but no one can do that for you. They can't physically do that for you because no one knows how you experience life in your own body. We can we can relate because of how I believe we are naturally designed. It gives the other some clarity in their own path, especially when you can see someone overcome something challenging. It gives you hope, and that hope isn't this false hope. For me, I see it as having other possibilities exist because of, and that's true because right now there's there could have been a different possibility happening for me in this moment. I didn't have to be doing this in this moment. I could have decided to go for a WALK. I'm not going to say it out loud because my dog is right there. And she knows I'm talking about her. You could see she knows I'm talking about her. Anyway, um, one thing I want to add before I close is if you are someone who feels deeply and has always maybe second guessed themselves, didn't follow their gut feeling, the most important thing for you is to make sure that you have practices and routines that remind you to ground yourself. Because to be able to feel very deeply, that is a lot of power running through you. And if there's any kind of blockage anywhere, it can be, it could be disruptive, especially if there is action taken, a choice taken when we don't ground ourselves. And sometimes life can make it difficult because there are outside influences that can really knock you off your feet, right? Um, but I would, for me, like I have to every day ground myself. And there's many different ways you can do that through breathing, through when I move in my, say, yoga practice on the mat. It's very, it ends up being a moving meditation. Grounding is going to be is going to be the best support for your gifts. So, thank you for being here. I'll see you on the next one.